Okay. Try it again, see if I can hear somebody. Did somebody say hello? I had to change my speakers.
Mr. Chair, can you hear us?
Got it. Thank you. All right. So let me see what we have so far on the line. Commissioner Rojas and myself. Looks like we need to wait for a couple of other commissioners yet to join us.
That is correct, and our legal representative.
Okay.
And we are live on YouTube too.
Lisa, it looks like Commissioner Enders needs the link to the meeting.
Okay, I'll send it to him.
Okay. Looks like we've got a quorum now. I know that Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Allender, and will be out today. And then Commissioner Baker and Commissioner Sadowski will be just a little bit late. Okay, so we're ready to begin our meeting here. So good morning and welcome to the August 1st, 2023 City Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is all virtual today as we welcome the mayor's second term, as well as the swearing in of the new city council members. We appreciate you being here today, and commissioners look forward to hearing your case. We understand that every project is important and unique, and we want to make sure that we address all of the docketed items individually with the attention that they deserve. And we also want to build the consensus.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
our legal representative is still not online.
Okay. I think I can still finish my introduction while we wait on her.
Okay.
Correct?
Yep.
Yep. So again, our goal is to build consensus between applicant, public, and city staff. We also believe we can reach consensus by being brief yet heard. For the cases that we hear, we have time limits, which is 5 minutes for staff presentations, 20 minutes for the applicant, plus any questions by the commissioners. When we move to public comment, Mr. Rex Winkle and I will call on those who have raised their virtual hand. And public comments are expected to be no longer than 2 minutes when speaking as an individual, or up to 5 minutes when representing a community association or a larger group. In all instances, please limit repetitive comments. Also, help us keep the meeting on track by being ready to speak when called upon. And so when you're promoted, please have your camera on and be unmuted. As we get started with our meeting, I know staff is going to have some additional ground rules and instructions. So we might as well go through those as we wait on our legal representative to join us. So Joe, can you go over those, please?
And Mr. Chair, I'll actually be
Okay.
leading this meeting today, so I'll go ahead and get started. There are two categories of people participating in the meeting. There are attendees and panelists. Right now, the only panelists are the commission members and city staff. If you are an applicant or a citizen who is interested in a case, please use the raise hand function when the chair calls the case to let staff know that they should promote you to a panelist position. When that promotion happens, you will need to accept the promotion. It will also appear temporarily as if you have been disconnected. However, you will reconnect shortly. If you are joining us via the app on a phone or computer, please change your screen name to reflect your legal name, and understand that if you are calling in with a phone number, you cannot adjust your screen name, and you will also not be able to use the raise hand function in Zoom. If you are joining by telephone, you can raise your hand when the case is called by pressing star followed by the number 9. At the time of promotion, the chair would like for you to turn on your camera and microphone, if possible, so that the commission can see and hear you when it is your time to talk. Your microphone needs to always be on mute unless you are giving testimony at the appropriate time. And as a reminder that the chat box is only for questions about the agenda, and merits of the case should not be discussed in the chat box. We have also placed signs on the council chamber doors directing anyone who might appear in person to head down to the 15th floor to be assisted by staff if they wish to provide testimony on a case. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Looks like our council has joined us, so let's go ahead with the consent agenda items, please.
Okay, consent agenda number C1 is CLD Final Plat 2023-00014, a request to approve a final plat in District B3-3 on about 5.72 acres, generally located at Northwest Tiffany Springs Parkway and North Polo Drive, creating 2 lots and 5 tracts for 2 multi-unit buildings. Staff recommends approval with conditions. Consent item C2, CD CPC 2023-00108, is a request to approve a project plan for a multi-unit development on about 19.79 acres, generally located between North Cherry Street and North Holmes Street. Staff recommends approval with conditions. Consent item C3 is CD CPC 2023-00104, a request to approve a project plan for outdoor light equipment sales in District B3 on about 12 acres, generally located at North Congress Avenue and Northwest Old Tiffany Springs Road. Staff recommends approval with conditions. Consent item C4, CLD Final Plat 2023-00018, a request to approve a final plat in District MPD on about 2 acres, generally located at the southeast corner of Northwest Roan Ridge Road and the entrance to the Edgewood Farms development, creating 1 lot to allow for a restaurant. Staff recommends approval with conditions. And consent item C5, CD CPC 2023-00081, a request to approve a project plan within the West Bottoms mixed-use redevelopment area on about 0.4 acres, generally located at 1200 Union Avenue, and staff recommends approval with conditions.
Okay. Let's see here. Any questions from the commissioners regarding docket items C1, C2, C3, C4, or C5? All
No.
right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket items C1, C2, C3, C4, or C5, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chair, Paul Helmer has raised his hand and is being promoted to a panelist.
Okay. Mr. Helmer, as you take yourself off mute, you might turn your camera on and state your name for the record, please, your name and address. Mr. Helmer, you there?
Looks like he might still be trying to connect to the audio.
Mr. Helmer, it looks like you're off mute. Hopefully you can join us here.
It does not appear that he is connected to audio, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding docket items C1 through C5?
No one else appears with their hand raised.
Okay, let's go ahead and close public testimony then, and I'll take a motion from the commission, please.
Chair Corral, I move to approve docket items C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 with conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket items C1 through C5 with conditions stated. Giovanni, can you take a roll call or on that motion, please? Or Lisa?
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
and Crown.
Aye. Okay, it looks like the motion passes for approval of docket items C1 through C5 on a vote 5-0. Okay, let's go ahead and move to our regular agenda items, please, beginning with the cases that are wanting to be continued to a future date.
Okay, starting with regular agenda item number 1 is CD CPC 2023-00091, a request to approve an MPD final plan in District MPD to construct two buildings, retail sales and gasoline and fuel sales on about 17 acres generally located at North Platte Purchase Drive and Northwest Fountain Hills Drive. The applicant is seeking continuance to August 15th and staff recommends without fee. Case number docket item number 4, case number CD SUP 2022-00056, a request to approve a special use permit to allow for a restaurant in District R6 on about 0.059 acres located at 2032 Summit Street. Staff recommends continuance without fee to September 5th. Docket item number 9 is CD CPC 2023-00053, a request to approve an amendment to the major street plan by adding Northeast 100th Street east of Maple Woods Parkway and removing Northeast 96th Street from the major street plan east of Maple Woods Parkway. Staff recommends continuing to September 19th without fee. Docket item number 10, CD CPC 2023-00088, a request to approve a preliminary plat in District R80 on about 10 acres generally located south of East 79th Street, approximately 1,000 feet west of Little Blue Ridge Road. Staff recommends continuance without fee to August 15th. Docket item 11, CD CPC 2023-00096, a request to approve a residential development plan for 13 units on about 0.47 acres generally located on the southeast corner of Locust Street and East 19th Street. Staff recommends continuance without fee to August 15th. Docket item 12.1, CPC 2023-00074, a request to consider amending the Martin City Richard Scabar area plan by changing the recommended land use from residential medium density, residential low density, and open space buffer land to residential low density and open space buffer land use designation on about 365 acres in an area generally bordered by Highway 150 on the north, East 155th Street on the south, Prospect Avenue on the east, and Holmes Road on the west. Staff recommends continuance without fee to August 15th, 2023. Docket item 12.2, CPC 2023-00073, a request to approve a rezoning from District R-80 to District R-7.5 on about 365 acres in an area generally bordered by Highway 150 on the north, 155th on the south, Prospect Avenue on the east, and Holmes on the west. Continuance without fee to August 15th. And finally, docket item 12.3, case number CPC 2023-00072, a request to approve a preliminary plat in District R-7.5 to allow for 580 detached lots on about 365 acres in an area generally bordered by 150 Highway on the north, East 155th Street on the south, Prospect Avenue on the east, and Holmes Road on the west. And staff recommends continuance without fee to August 15th. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so all of them but number 9 are looking to be continued as per the docket. So 9 is to September 19th without fee, and I guess there's
Correct.
docket 1 to August 15th. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Any questions from the commissioners regarding continuance of the docket items stated? Okay. So at this time, we'll go ahead and open it up for any public testimony. If there's anybody out there who'd like to speak regarding continuance of docket items 1, 4, 9, 10, 11, and companion cases 12.1, 12.2, and 12.3.
Mr. Chair, Patricia Jensen has her hand raised and is being promoted to a panelist.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Jensen.
Good morning, Chair. Patricia Jensen, and I represent the applicant on docket item number 1. I would just mention that this needs to be automatically continued due to lack of quorum. So since Commissioner Allender isn't here, there are only 3 members that heard this case the last time. And so there's not a quorum to make a motion on this case. It just automatically has to be continued to August 15th.
Okay. Yep, I think there's
That's it.
actually 2 of the members not present today.
Oh, okay.
Hill, so,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
okay, that's all right. That's fine with me, but we'll just make the statement on that anyways in the motion. So,
Okay,
all right,
That's
anybody
it.
else? Larissa?
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
No one else has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then on continuance of regular agenda items. If no discussion, I'll take a motion, please.
I guess I'm off mute. Sorry, didn't realize. Chair Crow, I move to continue docket items 4, 10, 11, 12.1, 12.2, and 12.3 as stated in the docket, and to continue docket item 1 to August 15th without fee, and docket item number 9 to September 19th without fee.
Okay, can you maybe amend docket item 1 just to state that it's an automatic continuation due to a lack of quorum?
Absolutely. And I'll amend that the motion on docket item number 1 is an automatic continuance due to the lack of quorum.
Okay,
Second.
all right, so I've got a motion and a second for, let's see, continuance of docket item 1, 4, 9, 10, 11, and 12.1 through 12.3, with number 1 being due to a lack of quorum. So can somebody take a roll call on the motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes in 5-0. All right, so let's go ahead and move back to docket item 2.1 and 2.2, please.
Okay, the next 2 items are companion cases. Docket item 2.1, CPC 2023-00113, amending Chapter 88, the Zoning and Development Code for the purpose of creating a process to allow property owners to apply for a reasonable accommodation to the Zoning and Development Code by enacting a new section to be codified as Section 88571, and docket item 2.2, CPC 2023-00112, amending Chapter 88, the Zoning and Development Code for the purpose of clarifying that group homes for 8 or fewer unrelated persons with disabilities, including 2 additional persons acting as house parents, which are allowed as of right in all districts that allow household living uses, include group homes for those recovering from alcoholism or addiction to drugs, by repealing Section 88-80502-B, group living, and Section 88-80503-E, halfway house, and enacting in lieu thereof new sections of like number and subject matter, and by updating Table 110-1, residential use district, residential district use table, and Joseph Rexwinkle is the staff planner.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I am a little ill today, so I will try not to cough during this brief presentation, but I am the person in my group that's most familiar with these proposed amendments, so I did want to join today and present them to the commission. As Larissa mentioned, these are 2 companion cases. And they both have to do with group homes and how the zoning code defines group homes and regulates them. The first one related to reasonable accommodation is there's a federal law. In fact, I think there's more than one that requires local governments like ours to provide reasonable accommodation to disabled persons upon request. And we already do that. We have citizens, for example, who sometimes need accommodation for these hearings that we already provide to them. There is no formal process to make that request currently. This amendment would propose to create that type of process where a person who needs that accommodation can file an application for such or a request for such. And it gets documented. Our decision on that request gets documented. So it can be an accommodation, for example, like someone who is hearing impaired that needs assistance with participating in this hearing, but it can also be an accommodation, for example, of an individual who, in order to make use of their dwelling or to live in their dwelling, they need a ramp installed that violates a setback requirement, for example. And in those cases, currently, the only remedy is to go get a variance. Although under the law, we could grant an accommodation, there has been no established process that gives us authority in our code that gives us that authority. So the amendment, the purpose of the amendment is to establish that process that would give staff the authority to grant or deviate from strict application of any zoning requirement that precludes reasonable accommodation. So that is an entirely new section. I don't have any text. I could show the text on the screen, but you have it in your packet, so I won't do that. The next one I will share on the screen just because it's a little more confusing because it's existing definitions that we are proposing to change in the ordinance related to group homes. Bear with me while I pull that up. And this is just taken directly from the staff report. What we have currently in our zoning ordinance is 2 types of residential uses. So we start at the top with our residential use group, which is, as it states, a group. And then we have a household living category and a group living category. And underneath our group living category, we have subtypes, and one of which is group home. So when we talk about permitted residential uses, the only 2 groups of residential uses that the city identifies is household living and group living. So anything that's not what meets the definition of household living falls under the group living category, either a specific group living use like group home or an unspecified group living use. And what we're specifically trying to refer to today are group homes for persons who are disabled. Excuse me. Group homes for disabled persons are currently considered household living, but the only reference to that in the zoning code is in the definition of group home. And so what the city planning department, which the law department did prepare the bulk of these changes, but we are proposing, the city planning department, some minor edits here to the definitions of group home and household, so that it would help with interpretation and application of the intent of the change. So I'll walk you through that. The definition of group home currently is a single dwelling occupied on a permanent basis by a group of unrelated persons with disabilities. Group homes may also be occupied by paid staff or caregivers. Group homes are typically operated for the care of developmentally disabled persons. It expressly excludes halfway houses for alcoholics, drug addicts, prisoners, or juvenile delinquents, or any facility for individuals under court-mandated supervision. Group homes for 8 or fewer mentally or physically handicapped persons with up to 2 additional persons acting as house parents or guardians are considered households and are allowed as of right in all districts in which household living, in all districts that allow household living. So the issue with that definition is that under federal law, persons that are recovering from or recovering alcoholics or drug addicts are considered disabled. And our definition expressly excludes that those types of individuals. So we need to change our definition to conform to the federal law. And the proposed definition is a single dwelling occupied on a permanent basis by a group of 9 or more unrelated persons with disabilities. Group homes may also be occupied by paid staff or caregivers. A single dwelling occupied by a group of 8 or fewer unrelated persons with disabilities is considered household living and is not considered a group home. To further clarify the distinction, we also propose changing the definition of household, which is itself part of the definition of household living. Right above where I have the text household highlighted under household living, you can see there it uses the term household living, or I'm sorry, household. So we need to change that definition to accommodate this group arrangement. Household would be defined as any of the following: an individual or 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or a group of not more than 5 persons, excluding servants, who need not be related by blood or marriage, living together and subsisting in common as a separate nonprofit housekeeping unit, which provides 1 kitchen. All 3 of those are in the current ordinance. There's no change to that. But we would be adding this clarification that a group D, a group of 8 or fewer unrelated disabled persons, which may include 2 additional persons acting as house parents or guardians, who need not be related to each other or to any of the disabled persons residing in the home. So again, our definition already considered group homes for disabled persons to be household living. The issue with that definition is it did not consider recovering alcoholics and drug addicts to be disabled. We're fixing that. We're clarifying that a group home of 8 or fewer disabled persons is in fact not a group home. It's just household living by virtue of the changes to both definitions. And then the other change that is not shown here is to halfway house, which is not a group living use. It is actually a public and civic use category. And that is to make the similar language changes with regard to disabled persons being persons who are recovering addicts and alcoholics as well. And that concludes my presentation. We are recommending approval in order to bring our ordinances into compliance with the law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I had a couple of questions. Can you remind me how the 8 or 9 was determined on this?
I believe that the number 8 or 9, the dividing line there is set by law. I don't know that we have a choice in deciding whether it should be less or more than that.
Okay. And then the other one is just a curiosity question. On page 2 of the new language, there's item 5 at the very bottom. It just says all medical information of the applicant will be destroyed by the city after time for appeal. What's the time frame for that? You know?
In this one, I believe that it is 15 days. I know that initially it was proposed to be 30, and I think we commented that all of our other appeals are 15 days. So let me double check that real quick.
It's 15 days to appeal a staff decision to BZA, but there's also an appeal, to circuit court after the BZA, and that's 30 days.
Okay.
And the eight persons and 2 caretakers, that comes from the case law. It was actually a St. Louis case involving a group home, and the 8th Circuit upheld an ordinance that limited the number of individuals to 8 plus 2 caretakers is reasonable. And so that's what our ordinance does as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners regarding docket items 2.1 or 2.2?
I have a question.
like-
Are there any spatial type requirements for these group homes?
Separate, like a separation, like they have to be so far from one another, or is that what you mean?
I'm looking at the size of the facility to accommodate, or any type of guidelines for that.
Not in our ordinance.
Okay.
So I'm guessing the other group living definitions are included in the fraternities and sorority listed. This is just one subsection, correct?
That's right. Those aren't changing. This is the only one changing.
Okay, that answers, because I was just thinking about those 2 meetings we had with the person offering semi short-term stays that wanted to be a group home, and trying to figure out how that works within this. But I'm guessing that's a separate conversation than this definition.
Yeah, it wouldn't be considered a group home unless the person's living there are disabled.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket items 2.1 or 2.2, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. If there's nothing to discuss from the commission, I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Corral, I move to approve docket items 2.1 and 2.2.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket items 2.1 and 2.2. Giovanni, do you mind taking a roll call on that motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
All right,
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
okay, looks like the motion passes then 5-0. Thanks for joining us, Joe, as you're under the weather today. Hopefully you get better
you.
soon.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, let's move on to docket item number 3, please.
Okay, docket item number 3 is CPC 2023-00079, a request to approve a local historic landmark designation on about 0.9 acres, generally located at 4526 Warwick Boulevard, and Bradley Wolf is the staff planner.
Good morning. My name is Brad Wolf. I'm the City Historic Preservation Officer. I'll present the case today. The address before you is 4526 Warwick Boulevard, currently zoned R5, and the applicant, which is the Southmoreland Neighborhood Association, seeking approval for local landmark designation of the George B. Richardson residence, which corresponds to HO overlay. since we don't do these very often, this site is located just east of the plaza in the Southmoreland neighborhood. For ordinance, there's actually 3 criteria that every board and commission and decision-making body looks at when considering a recommending local designation. One is the criteria listed for eligibility of the National Register of Historic Places. The second is the economic impact of the designation on the subject property and the surrounding area. And the third item is conformance with the city's adopted plans and policies. So the proposed local designation is approximately 0.9 acres. It's a single family house with a carriage house in the back. I'll just give you an overview of the images. This house was built in 1913 for George B. Richardson of the Richardson Conover Hardware Store, which you see some of his historic buildings in the downtown in the West Bottoms. Root and Siemens were the architects for this house. They were most notable. Some of their most prominent structures they designed were the Country Club Christian Church and the Scarrett Building. This is the carriage house located in the back of the property to the west. And this is the 1940 photograph. So as you can see from the exterior, there's been very little alterations to the building. It still retains a lot of its original character as a classical revival building. I'll just give you a little background. This was part of a block of fairly large homes. You can hear on the 1925 Atlas and even on the 1951 Atlas. Currently, it is surrounded by various uses. To the south is the Jans Library for the Kansas City Arts Institute. And to the northeast of the property is the main campus for the Art Institute, and to the east is Southmoreland Park. Unity Temple is to the north, and then the Simpson House, which is also owned by Unity Temple, is located behind the house to the west. And to the south, there are a number of the high-scale apartment buildings and then some historic colonnaded apartments further south towards the plaza. In terms of the review criteria, the Historic Preservation Commission found that this house was a good example of the classical revival style, and it was eligible under National Register Criteria C in the area of architecture. Under Criterion 2, of economic impact, there is no currently approved plans for the site, so it's hard to judge if the historic designation would affect any proposed plan. In terms of a direct effect, the owner obtained a cost per square foot for rehabilitation, estimated approximately 9,500 square foot house, which would be 1.4 to 1.9 million was the estimated cost that's submitted by the applicant to rehab the house. In particular, on review criterion 3, the property is under the Midtown Plaza area plan. There are a number of goals in the plan that support the designation, including it will protect historically and architecturally significant structures. It will not. The proposed future land use is residential high, which is approximately 1.5 in the new zoning designation, but that would not conflict with the existing continued use as a single family or lower scale developments. It does in the area of development, it recommends maintaining the predominant form of the area. So preservation of the existing house would maintain the predominant form. And this area does fall under the Plaza Bowl height recommendations, which is 45 feet. The house is currently approximately 41 feet in height. So this designation would actually follow the Plaza Bowl height recommendations. And then in terms of the comprehensive plan, the Casey Spirit Playbook, the designation would preserve and celebrate community character, history, art, and culture. As noted, the Historic Preservation recommended approval of the application, and staff also recommends approval of the application. And that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, just question I have is who's the one that initiated this preservation? Was
So
it
yeah, so the Southmoreland neighborhood is the applicant. Ryan Heiser, representing the neighborhood, submitted the application.
Was that typical on projects like this, that the homeowner or the one that owns the actual property? They're not the ones that initiate things like this?
But the ordinance does allow for people other than the owner to apply. There are restrictions on who can do that. One, it has to be the neighborhood association, historic preservation commission, or the member of city council in particular.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant or to staff here? All right, seeing none. Mr. Wolf, do you mind stop sharing the screen there?
Yes.
You can see everybody. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, since I don't see any other questions from commissioners, let's go ahead and open it up to the applicant then, please.
And is the applicant Laura?
Or both.
Okay.
Carter is the applicant. Yes.
I am promoting Laura to the panel. And Laura, you've been promoted.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I did have a short presentation to share if
Okay.
that is available. I think I sent it to Anna and Brad.
I do have that available if you want me to share that with the commission.
Or unless I can share my screen, either one.
I think you should be able to do that.
Okay. All right. Bear with me just a second. Okay. So you should see on my screen here. We're here today. First of all, my name is Laura Burkhalter. I'm president of the Southmoreland Neighborhood Association, and I live at 4134 Locust Street. We did apply for the historic designation in response to rumblings of a demolition permit for this property. And this is really the only mechanism in which we can hit the timeout. Let's take a beat and see if there's any other options besides demolition. And so, you know, the location of this property at 4526 Warwick, it overlooks the Kessler designed Southmoreland Park, the Art Institute, and the Nelson Atkins Museum. Part of the driver for our request for this application is that community and residents of the neighborhood generated a petition that gathered over 6,000 signatures and nationwide response and interest in the property. And so we really thought the outpouring of participation and interest in this property gave us resolve to continue with our application. How did we get here? Our board had several different points of view on this register. Part of it primarily includes historic preservation. This is the last single family home in this part of the neighborhood, and they just don't make them like they used to. So we find that it's very important to maintain the historic fabric of our neighborhood and continue with trying to preserve this house. Neighbors also want to avoid a vacant lot. The owner has indicated that their desire to demolish the house, but there is no development plan for this site. Some residents want to avoid high density and appreciate the low density and characterful buildings that are more pleasant to be around. And this property is not zoned for high-rise development. A lot of our residents are concerned with sustainability, and we all know that the most sustainable buildings are the ones that already exist. And we encourage creative thinking and adaptive reuse of the existing building, and we have several examples of that in our neighborhood today. And then we also feel that there is a need for more housing in the neighborhood, although demolishing this house does not guarantee new housing because there is no development plan. There is a benefit to being added to the historic register. It can provide some protection to the property, of course, and it also encourages good design and can add to the value of the home and the neighborhood. This chart is just to indicate that, yes, the Votter family who owns it now has been living or has made this building its home for several years, but it had a life much further beyond that and up to 1913 when it was built. And we think that it can continue to have a great life moving forward if we're allowed this designation. It is adjacent to a few historic districts in our neighborhood, including some historic districts on the National Register and on the local register. And you can see that house in the yellow star here. It has some wonderful historic features that you would never see in new construction today. And we feel it's our duty to try to preserve those and maintain them, both on the exterior and the interior. These beautiful staircases and moldings and wood trim, you just will not find anything like that today. We did receive a unanimous recommendation by the Historic Preservation Commission to have this property added to the local register on May 26th. We have a lot of vacant lots in this part of the neighborhood. In fact, there are over 6 acres of vacant property in this part of the neighborhood between 44th and 46th Street, between Main and Warwick. None of them have development plans. And if this house were demolished, it would be another vacant lot with no development plan in that part of the neighborhood. One vacant lot has been has prompted some homeless encampments on the site. And so this is something that has become a concern for neighbors, and how do we mitigate this type of activity in our neighborhood that reduces property values and increases safety concerns. In fact, this property was initially purchased by the proposed buyer of the current 4526 Warwick site for development that then fizzled and now has resulted in other buyers and this kind of activity. The cultural district is a part of this portion of the neighborhood, and it would potentially go to the side of this property. The redevelopment impact, this is under 1 acre of property. There are no other parcels adjacent for sale. And so we just have concern about the financial and practical feasibility of development on such a small site. It's also on the boulevard, on Warwick Boulevard. So setbacks and considerations for the boulevard need to be included. It's also part of several plans and overlays, as Brad mentioned, the Midtown Plaza Area Plan, specifically to protect historically and architecturally significant structures, and thinking about reuse of buildings and enhanced green space and encouraging pedestrian use, which low scale development and existing historic homes encourage. We have several examples of adaptive reuse in Southmoreland. In this area of Southmoreland between 43rd and 47th Street, there are 11 examples of houses being reused as office space, as meeting space, as bed and breakfasts, as libraries. And so we pride ourselves on being able to think creatively about the existing housing stock that we have in the neighborhood. And we always encourage repurposing and reuse before resorting to demolition. When we had our public meeting, we asked the audience, what do they envision for this property? And many of our residents, 21 responses were comments about reusing the property, giving it an opportunity to be a single family home again, or institutional use. And we don't believe the owner of the property has really done their due diligence to keep this property intact. Aside from a sign in the yard, it's never been actively marketed. It's not been marketed on the commercial real estate sites such as LoopNet, and it's not been marketed on MLS. We have asked the owner repeatedly to cast a wider net in order to sell the house and find an owner that will keep the structure intact. And we asked them to do it before resorting to demolition. We've had several communication with the owner. Here's a list of meetings that we've had with the owners and the agent since May 5th. Most of them, we've said, what can we do to help you save the house? Please market the house so you can cast a wider net to sell it and maintain it. And then we can all succeed if you market the house commercially and residentially. We don't want the owner to fail, but we also need to maintain our historic character of our neighborhood. On July 8th, the owner indicated that he had sold the house. However, it's actually contingent on our withdrawal of this historic application and rezoning of the property. And then just last week, we did have another public board meeting where the owner said again that the house is contingent on the withdrawal of the application and that there was no development plan to share. We even made the meeting virtual so that the prospective buyer could be available to share his plans, and he did not make himself available. And just to recap, these are all the reasons why we are asking for this property to be added to the historic register. Preservation, uncertainty, a need for housing, but this does not provide that, and sustainability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Somewhat unrelated to the subject site, but you had mentioned the other vacant lot that had a buildup of houseless encampment and then also just debris and trash. Have you all as a neighborhood association been working with the city to report it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. We've seen a couple of projects where sometimes that happens and then the owner uses it as an example of blight, and we would hate for that to someone to try to think that that's a good way to get incentives for that property.
We would absolutely hate that as well.
Okay, any other questions from the commission to the applicant? Commissioner Beasley?
So I'm hearing the actual property owner is not in favor of this historic designation from what you just said.
They would like to demolish the house and sell the property. No, they're not in favor. We have asked many times, we've had several meetings to first prove us wrong by marketing it on the residential and commercial real estate websites, and that has not occurred. And so we're kind of at this point today.
Hey, give any indication from the prospective buyer that would be interested in this designation?
We asked, and they are also not in favor of the designation.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
So how long has it actually been inactive? Because at one point you stated the family lived there, but I'm under the impression they're not there now.
They moved out in 2021. And it's been sitting empty. It was listed in 2022. on the commercial market just by putting a sign in the yard, but not actively marketed.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, seeing none from the commission, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item, let's see, what are we on again? 3?
Yes.
Yeah. Please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
Okay, I am promoting Meg Reuter and Jonathan Sturm. And there's more, but I'll let them give their public comment
Okay.
first.
All right, let's start with Meg, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excuse me. Are you ready for me to begin?
Please, yes.
Okay. If the owners or the prospective purchasers want to speak first, I'm more than happy to wait. I'm a neighbor and I don't represent a community interest, and so I am sort of a 2-minute speaker. Is that how you'd like to continue?
Yeah, if you'd like to continue with your testimony as to support or not support of this docket item, then yeah, please continue.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to give you the option of ordering us. So my name is Meg Reuter. I live at 4618 Warwick Boulevard, so just about a block south. I live in a building called the Sophian Plaza, which was built in 1923. At the time when the neighborhood was becoming a posh set of large homes and joining the very large homes of August Meyer, Red Vanderslice Hall, and William Raquel Nelson, who lived in the property, had Oak Hall living in the property that is now the Nelson Atkins. And so I am the historian for our building, which has given me the occasion to do a fair amount of research of the building, our building, but the neighborhood and what it means in the arc of Kansas City's development. And so, as I'm sure everybody on the Planning Commission knows, August Meyer was the city planning commissioner or chair at the time that George Kessler was engaged to create a city beautiful network of boulevards and parks. And one of those boulevards is Warwick Avenue Boulevard, sorry. And so part of the precepts of that is to use the natural contours of the land and to use native materials, and so to create more of a natural environment. I come from New York City, and so they are following in Olmsted, and so it's something that is dear to my heart and brought me to the neighborhood. The sweep of Warwick Boulevard there, right? It's no longer straight. It curves on down. And Southmoreland is and its retaining wall. The other walls around the area are all of native stone, and the street is tree lined, and so that creates an historic integrity and an elegance to the street. And so the owners have suggested at one point that Oak Hall is there and KCAI's more recent developments are there, and so therefore there's no more character to preserve. And I would disagree with that. I think that the considerable setback of Oak Hall is actually, and the rather grand front grounds and landscaping adds to that whole, the sweep and the beauty of that. I think the way the current owners have suggested what the potential buyer would like to do, an 11-story building requiring zoning changes on a relatively small lot, destroys that whole possibility of maintaining that character. And so not only is the designation of the home as historic important to recognize what that home symbolizes, the architecture, the architectural firm, etc. It is actually enhances and is part of the character of the street. And so I just wanted to add that. I know that there's going to be more development along Main Street with the trolley, but at least, but we're not the main. We're not Main. We are a neighborhood, and so I just wanted to say that in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who's next, Larissa?
Jonathan Stern.
Okay.
Okay, you can hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I'd really like your support in voting yes on the historic designation of 4526 Warwick. I run by that house quite frequently on my runs to Whole Foods. I live at 302 East 43rd Street. So I live in the Southmoreland area. And yeah, the owners never came to any of the other neighbors or the neighborhood to ask any questions, approval, anything that would fit inside the fabric of the neighborhood. And so with that, since we had no notice besides a demolition notice, we could tell there was no good plan. And as said earlier, just how the area is set back, you just really can't build a high rise that well. It really doesn't, the planning really doesn't make sense. And until then, I really think keeping this historic house is in the best interest of everybody.
Okay, thank you. Who's next, Larissa?
Lisa Briscoe and Paul Helmer and Jim Weinzer are being promoted.
Okay.
And we'll start with Lisa Briscoe.
Sure. Has Lisa accepted the promotion yet?
Yes, I don't see her on the list though. So if you'd like to start with Jim Weinzer, we can start with him first.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Jim Wanzer, and I reside at 612 Brush Creek Boulevard here in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm here on behalf of the Rock Hill Homes Association. We are the neighborhood that is adjacent to Southmoreland and share very many of the same preservation issues because of the similarities in our neighborhood. I serve as the liaison for external affairs, but in your packet, you will also note that you have a letter from our board signed by the president of our association, Dr. Jerry Carlson. And we are here to support the application of listing this on the local registry with a unanimous vote of our board. Specifically, I would like to just address briefly the position of the owner that this listing will create an economic hardship. And the owner has repeatedly stated that the house needs significant upgrades in terms of roofing, wiring, plumbing, and so on. And each time that we listen to him present the argument of economic hardship, we are typically reminded of the houses that we have purchased in the neighborhood because it describes the investments we too have made in our properties. They're old houses that typically need update, and the good news is most of them have been updated in a very first-class manner. The question that becomes relevant is the price point at which the house has been listed, or I guess not even listed, but is called for 1.9 million. Because to upgrade a property of this magnitude will take considerable investment, and yet the house is not priced at a point where it can attract that type of buyer. In Rock Hill, we currently have 2 homes that are being extensively renovated. We call them dumpster renovations because they pull a dumpster out and do significant internal work on the property. But those houses were purchased between $300,000 and $400,000, making it economically feasible for a property owner to rehabilitate a property and maintain the historic character of the neighborhood. So then you ask yourself, the question is, why is this property marketed at 1.9 million and not marketed to the real estate market, to the homeowners market? And the answer that occurs to many of us is it's the incentive of the streetcar, where the property becomes worth more than the house. So the irony of all this is that we have, as taxpayers, supported the development of the streetcar line, but it has incentivized developers to look at vacant property, but also look at demolition of his.
Uh-oh, you just went on mute there for some reason.
The 2-minute time had lapsed.
Okay,
So
well, he was representing Rock Hill Homes Association. That's why I was
Okay.
thinking. Thank you.
we can add 2 more minutes if you'd like for the Rock Hill Association.
Sorry about that, Mr. Wanzer. If you'd like to finish, please do.
I'm actually comfortable. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to point out the irony of the streetcar incentive that has been a negative impact on historic structures because it does incentivize developers to tear those down, and that the local listing and the zoning are the only tools that residential neighborhoods have to protect historic structures. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Okay.
Lisa,
Lisa
you ready?
Briscoe.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes, we got you.
Excellent. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Lisa Briscoe. I live at 3514 Jefferson Street, Kansas City, Missouri. I'm an architect and an urban planner and executive director of Historic Kansas City. We are here today to support the designation of the residence for 3 primary reasons. First, it sits in a historic neighborhood of large historic homes that have always had to protect its edges from encroachment, from the surrounding wonderful institutions like the Art Institute, the Nelson, and certainly the Kemper Art Museum. The Southmoreland situation is now further threatened by an influx of short-term rentals, which you've heard a great deal about, which is also eroding their local ownership base. Second, HKC always supports historic neighborhoods that take the lead, seeking our help and to preserve the history and character that is important to them. And Southmoreland, as you know, is opposing the demolition of the property. And without any viable supported plan for its replacement, neither can HKC support its demolition. Third, our society really has a remarkably short-sighted view of built history and its importance. And a building or site, as Jim pointed out, is valuable as long as its money is for its owner. Once it fails in that, it's torn down typically for something else. And the long-term value to the larger community is often ignored. But in an economic, cultural, social climate that is constantly changing this day and age, it really seems foolish to ignore future possibilities for sites such as this. And isn't that what planning is all The Historic Preservation Commission determined that the home is eligible for the register, as Brad described, and approval of the nomination is the only tool our city has to assist neighborhoods to stop demolitions of historic structures in our city. Designation does buy time to allow development strategy between the neighborhood, the city, and new or interested developers or buyers, as Laura was describing. And with that time, change can occur. But once it's gone, there's no overdues. So we would urge you to support the designation and this Southmoreland neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Up next is Al Rose.
Okay. Rose, if you can.
Hello, this is Whitney Kerr. I'm speaking in lieu of Leonard Rose, the attorney who represents Matt Vaughter and Steve Vaughter. My name is Whitney Kerr. I am a real estate broker with the firm Cushman & Wakefield, and I represent Matt and Steve Vaughter in the sale of this property. I appreciate the difficult position that Mr. Chairman and members of the commission have. Having sat in that same chair for 7 years as chairman of the Planning Commission, I appreciate the difficulty that members of the commission frequently experience in handling cases like this. The first thing I want to tell the commissioners and Mr. Chairman is that my first job was with the City Planning Commission of Kansas City in 1955. So I have been involved in city planning and in the real estate business for soon to be 67 years. And not only have I been involved in the brokerage business all that time, but my wife and I have been very much involved in historic preservation. In fact, my wife, Day Kerr, Joan Dillon, and Hal Sandy are the three people who started Historic Kansas City in 1974. I was on the first Landmarks Commission for 4 years. My wife and I have been involved in the preservation of historic properties for over 50 years. And recently we received the Rozier Award, which is the Missouri Preservation most prestigious award for the restoration of about 5 or 6 historic houses, one of which is our home in Arrow Rock, Missouri, in Saline County, which is on the list of the 25 most important house structures in the state of Missouri. In addition to that, we were involved in the restoration of a house in Rock Hill at 704 East 47th Street. And we lived in Rock Hill for 20 years. And I was involved with my wife in the Warnell House and the Kansas City Museum, the Savoy Hotel restoration, the restoration of the Coates House Hotel, and many, many others. And so when people say that I am callous and not supportive of historic preservation, that is inaccurate and unfair to me and to my wife. Now, this is a very interesting case, and there's a lot of history here that needs to be told. This property was listed by our firm 3 years ago today. And Mr. Vaughter and his brother Matt instructed me to talk to the All Souls Church, their longtime neighbor and dear friends. Although the Vaughters were not members of that congregation, they had a very cordial relationship for many, many years with the congregation. So we worked with the All Souls Church for over a year, trying to figure out how we could accommodate an expansion of that cultural arts district there, linking it to the streetcar stop at 45th and Main and extending all the way over to the Nelson Atkins Gallery and the Sculpture Garden on the east side of Rock Hill Road at the north end of Rock Hill. We were not able to convince the church at that time about the relocation of the church property. What is very interesting and that most people don't understand is that the Kemper Museum, Contemporary Art, is landlocked. The Art Institute is landlocked. The Southmoreland Homes, a park there, where the Shakespeare Festival takes place, is landlocked. The Nelson Atkins Museum is landlocked. The only piece of property that is available right there for sale is the water property. So the very first thing that was done in the marketing and study of this area was to have it appraised. And what was very interesting is that the property contiguous to the north, which is the All Souls Church property, is presently zoned for a 12-story building. The property to the west, where the Montreux apartments were built by Mr. George Burt, with whom we'll talk about whom we'll talk in a few minutes, is also zoned for a 12-story building. Although when Mr. Burt developed the Montreux apartments, he built a lot of 4-story buildings there, but he could have built a 12-story building. The property where the Oak Hall apartments are located is a 12-story building, and the Sofian Plaza, which was built 100 years ago, is also a multi-story building. I think it's 8 or 10 stories. I'm not sure exactly. But in any event, this transition of this neighborhood began 100 years ago. That whole area there and the old area where the water property is located, built in 1913, was built first in the late 1887s with Oak Hall, which was William Rockwell Nelson's home, and then Marburg, the August Meyer property, which was also built before the turn of the century. That area of estates and magnificent big houses extended from 44th Street all the way over to where the University of Missouri campus is today. And that transition of properties from single-family residential use to institutional use and to high-rise apartment structure began 100 years ago. I lived in Rock Hill for 20 years. Rock Hill started in 1887. And as a residential area, I love the Rock Hill area. When we bought our house there in 1975, I moved off of 56th Street near Ward Parkway. People said, "Did you have financial reverses moving over to Rock Hill?" I bought the house for $47,000. And it's since been sold for a great deal more than that. But my wife and I were pioneers in doing that. We've also worked when I was chairman of the Planning Commission and working on the master plan for Kansas City, we were very interested in preserving Hyde Park, Jansen Place, Roanoke, Rock Hill, all these areas. And we did a great job of it, I think. And all of us are very proud of that work. Nothing was done to preserve the area that we're talking about here. This house owned by the Vaughters was never listed on the historic register locally and was never listed on the National Register. And incidentally, the National Register has a period of 18 months, which will delay a demolition. The Kansas City registration causes a 3-year denial of any opportunity to wreck the property. So one of the things that we're concerned about here, and I think that the commission is going to have to decide, is are you going to preserve private property rights or are you going to preserve old houses? And for someone who is a dedicated preservationist and very proud to be called a preservationist, and my record, I think, proves that, I am very concerned about what you are having to struggle with, because I think that the preservation of private property rights, which is a supporting column of everything that America believes in, is private property. This is not Soviet Russia, where you have groupthink and people coming in and saying, "I'm going to take your property and keep you from doing what you want to do with it," albeit when it's a beautiful house. The preservation of private property rights is extremely important, and that's the basic issue here. So let me tell you then what happened. After we worked on getting this property listed, we were then approached by a man named Ryan Heiser, who came in and told us that he wanted to do a B&B property on the Water House, and he made an offer of $1,100,000. Now we have an offer from Mr. George Burt to buy the property and build a multi-story apartment and a very nice apartment structure there. That is his plan. And that property is $1,900,000. Mr. Heiser then persisted in making another offer. And when it was both his offers were rejected by the Water brothers because the valuation was the valuation on the house, not the valuation of the property. And Heiser wanted, in addition, to have the Waters finance his contract. He also wanted time to rezone the property. And our question was, why would you need to rezone the property for a B&B when it's already zoned for 8 units for a B&B? So we rejected his offers. Then, without our knowledge and without our permission, he filed an application to list this property on the register, which could delay our ability to do anything with it for 3 years. When he was found out that he was not qualified or didn't have standing to list it, he then had enlisted the Southmoreland Community Home Association to come in and be the applicant. This situation is a very serious one because we have a buyer for that property who wants to take the property down. And the comments have been made that we did not list the property. I would just point out to everyone listening, Reese Nichols is the largest residential operation in the city of Kansas City. They do more houses, sell more than anyone else. They were the ones who were enlisted by Mr. Heiser to submit the proposal. After it was rejected, then they approached Block and Company and had Block and Company tender proposals to us. And then they come in on April 26th and file this application. And that is, I think, very wrong. And I am pleading with you to stop this so that we can proceed with the proper development of the property. And there are 6,000 signatures.
Mr. Kerr, thank you. We're going to have to kind of wrap it up here so we can move on to the next person. I gave you more time because you are representing the actual owner of the property, which I appreciate the historic history behind the property and what's actually going on here. But we're at a point we do need to move on to the next folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the extra time you've given me to tell this story.
Okay, thank you. All right, who's next, Larissa?
Ryan Heiser.
Okay. There you go.
Hi there. So
my name is David Tran, and this is my partner,
Ryan Heiser. And so thanks for letting us speak really quick. You know, one of the things is we took a trip recently to Boston, Massachusetts. We've lived in the Southmoreland and Rock Hill area for 10 years as well. And when you go to Boston or anything like that, you walk through these old historic areas and it feels incredible. And it's what makes the city really special. And I think people come to this area because of this historic nature as well, too. It is true. We did try to purchase this property. However, we've since moved on. We have no interest in it. And we are very interested in preserving the neighborhood we live in and own property in as well.
I'd like to say that we reside at 206 East 44th Street, located within the Southmoreland Neighborhood Association. We are members and residents. We all work and communicate on a voluntary basis, and we did work on behalf of the neighborhood, and we worked with Laura, the HOA president. I believe that the currenters are asking to sidestep all current guidelines and zoning recommendations, and that designation of this property as historic is our only tool to provide protections to this property and our neighborhood for the future. Historic designation is critical in maintaining the integrity and character of this historic neighborhood. Its demolition without a plan would be a blight on the neighborhood that's visited by so many guests to our city. There's real economic impact in its loss. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Margot Sims.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Do I press start video so I appear or?
That would be great.
Okay.
There you go. We can see you and hear you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Margot Sims. I live at 4555 Main Street in Kansas City. I am a board member of the Southmoreland Neighborhood Association. I feel certain that the prospective buyer of 4526 Warwick has no intention of building another structure on the lot if they are allowed to demolish the house. Mr. Kerr has just shared plans which require much more area than the Vaughter property encompasses, so he needs property which abuts the Vaughter property. To that end, he has pressured All Souls Church and its sister structure, the Simpson House, both of which are adjacent to the Vaughter property, to sell him their property. But All Souls has no interest in selling its property. That seems not to have deferred Mr. Kerr from his plan. He says real estate is a long game. Now there is a purported contract to purchase the Vaughter property for purportedly $1.9 million. This amount of money is so far out of line with every evaluator tool I and others could find online for estimating the property's value that I frankly doubt its validity. He has made other claims of value much higher than 1.9 million. If any of these inflated claims of the property's value are anywhere near the truth, then somebody has been seriously underpaying their property taxes. If the Vaughter brothers claim they will suffer economic hardship if the property is added to the historic register, I would urge you to take that claim with a huge grain of salt. The stated prospective buyer, Mr. George Burt, is a seasoned developer with decades of experience, yet he has not decided what to build on the property, or at least he hadn't as of a few days ago. Mr. Kerr has no idea either. With a good 100 years of experience between them, Mr. Kerr and Mr. Burt are at a loss as to what to build on that small lot. In fact, Mr. Burt stated in a meeting with several Southmoreland Neighborhood Association board members on July 14th that if it turned out he was unable to develop the property after demolishing the house, he would dig up the buried oil drums, grade the lot, and plant grass seed. Just kiss that $1 million goodbye. No big deal. At that point, we would have another blighted, vacant lot in Southmoreland. I urge you, please support this appeal for historic designation. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Steve Vaughter.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Do I have my video on?
That would be great if you would, please.
How do I do that?
Start
video, that would help. There we go.
Yeah, you might take your hand down as well since you're called upon. There you go.
Thank you. Let's see, lower hand.
Yep.
There you go.
Now it's
Okay, I
back
have
up.
a prepared statement. This has been my family home for many years. I took care of it for many years, and I'm very passionate about this subject. So I have a prepared statement I'd like to read. My brother and I own the property at 4526 Warwick, sought to be designated as a historic place. The applicant now is the Southmoreland Homeowners Association, but it always wasn't that way. A fellow named Ryan Heiser sought on numerous occasions to buy the property cheap, and only when he failed did he file the current application. When he figured out he didn't have standing to make the application, then and only then did the homeowners association substitute in. It's hard to conclude that there isn't some funny business going on here. Just as a record of note, his credit card paid the $207 application fee for that historic nomination or designation. Maybe it was a debit card, whatever, but it was his card that paid the fee. My brother and I do not consent to this designation, nor do we think the property is unique in the area. It's an area dotted with similar properties, and much of the area is already under the Southmoreland Neighborhood Historic District. I repeat, we do not consent. I understand it's close to unprecedented to designate against the owner's wishes. You should know that within the last couple of weeks, my brother and I contracted to sell the property to a well-known and respected developer, George Burt, for full asking price of 1.9. The contract is contingent on the property not being tagged with the historic place designation. His intention is to demolish the house and develop the property in a way that will enhance the neighborhood. If my brother and I lose that opportunity, we will do whatever it takes to protect ourselves and to be compensated. The house itself has no economic value. It's uninhabitable, and per a reputable contractor letter furnished to Mr. Wolf last week, it will cost $1.5 to $1.9 million to restore it. This is not an upgrade, this is a restore. Any designation, in the opinion of our lawyers, Leonard Rose and Greer Lang, Greer's in the room with us today, would likely constitute an unconstitutional taking, entitling us to just compensation, now established at 1.9. Think about this. If it is designated, it's bound to become blighted, vandalized, and go to ruin because nobody can economically afford to restore this property. And nothing can be done for, what, 3 years? I noted a common theme from Lisa Briscoe and many of the letter writers to the effect that neighbors fear a demolition followed by an empty lot. That can't happen. George Burt is not going to buy it and just sit on it, not develop the property. We request that you deny recommendation for this designation, or at the very least, delay your decision so that Mr. Burt can appear and convey his vision for the property. So we urge you not to recommend approval to the City Council. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Corral, could I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Walter, when was the last time the house was occupied?
September of 2021.
Okay, so it was occupied up until 2021, habitable at that time, but no longer habitable today.
We had quite a few bathrooms closed off. It was rough. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Paul Helmer.
Okay. Paul, as you take yourself off of mute and turn on your video, please state your name and address for the record. Paul, you there? Okay, Larissa, let's move on to the next person, please.
Yep, next one is Matt Botter.
Okay.
Thanks very much, everyone. My name is Matt Varder. I live in Boulder, Colorado, 2830 Ellison Place, Boulder, Colorado. I'm going to briefly go over George Burt's portfolio. There's been a lot of skepticism about his wherewithal as a developer in this forum. And yes, he could not be here today to represent his vision and his plans for this property, but I wanted to take the opportunity to go through some of his past accomplishments, particularly in the Kansas City area. So I'll be brief, but to his credit, he has completed the $10.5 million project completed in 2002, the Old Townley Lofts, an adaptive reuse. He's completed the water billing, a 20,000 square foot, 2-story historic structure. He's completed the Richards Conover Lofts, 83 units at a cost of $12 million, which happened to involve the demolition of nearby structures, but part of an overall area redevelopment plan. He has completed the West 7th Street Lofts, which are located in the Historic Garment District. This is a 54-unit residential structure at a cost of $6.6 million. He's completed the Riverbend Lofts at a cost of $7.5 million, completed in July of '98. He's completed the Bridgework Lofts, 47-unit condominiums, reuse of a former taxicab maintenance structure at a cost of $11 million, completed in late 2005. Going further, he's completed the 5 Delaware Lofts, a 13-unit condominium project for $4 million, completed in 2005. This happened to receive several Institute of Architects awards and made the cover of Dwell magazine. So he is capable of very, very creative designs, somewhat modern, along with capable of designing and building buildings that fit well into the neighborhood and are architecturally blended. Going further, Conover Place, 31-unit heavy timber design, completed in spring of 2002, an $8.5 million project. And I'll try to round it out here, but the City Home Bridgework Loft Phase 2 is a $10 million, 27-unit detached loft design in the River Market District. It was Kansas City's first detached single-family loft-style home in the urban core. 4646 Broadway, some of you may be familiar with that, located in Kansas City's Country Club Plaza, very, very nearby the Warwick property. This was a $16.5 million project, 18-unit luxury condominiums. You may be familiar with the HOK sport venue event world headquarters. This was a 110,000 square foot building located in the West River Market neighborhood, $30 million office project completed in 2005. And the RM West Apartments, $15.4 million, 137 unit apartment complex located in the River Market District, completed in August 2015. So who is George Burt and what is Consolidated Development Partners? Briefly, I would tell you that George Burt possesses 35 years of experience in commercial, retail, and multifamily developments, but his focus, ladies and gentlemen, is on urban redevelopment. He has his BA and MA.
No, someone else is talking.
And his partner in this consortium is James Potter, who has also a background in urban redevelopment. His previous employment was the Kansas City Economic Development Corporation. And Jim has degrees in environmental science, geography, along with a Master of Architecture. And Peyton Perry, 40 years of experience in real estate development with economics and management degrees from Stanford. So with that, I will leave you with a few closing thoughts. That Consolidated Development Partners has extensive experience and wide-ranging expertise. And the 4526 Warwick property is in good hands with them, and they've completed over $200 million in development projects. So what I'm trying to assure you is that this group, CDP, is well poised to develop this property and well poised to add value to the Southmoreland neighborhood, to Midtown Kansas City, and to add value to Kansas City in general. This is good for Southmoreland. This is good for Kansas City. And the concerns about this property going into a vacant lot as a homeless encampment, I would urge you to consider that by designating this as a historic property, we are well on our way to this vacant lot right now. The house has already been broken into several times. Copper pipe has been ruthlessly ripped from the home in previous break-ins. And if it is designated as a historic property for 3 years, it will remain a blighted eyesore in the neighborhood. The best possibility for this property right now is for its development, for multi-housing, and for an improved architectural addition to this neighborhood. For this reason, I urge you to decline this application. Thank you very much.
Just a curiosity, do you already have some preliminary plans for this site? Should it sell?
He does not. And George has not spent the time and resources to sketch out architectural renderings and designs for this property until this historic designation is dropped. He has a vision encompassed in the top of his head, but there's nothing on paper yet because of the cost necessary.
Okay.
Chair Corral, can I ask one more question?
You bet.
Would your thoughts about the future use of the property change if you knew that the R5 zoning were not, to be, if people weren't in favor of changing the R5 zoning, which would drastically limit the ability to redevelop the site, would your opinion change about what the future use should be?
I am not qualified to answer that question. I would defer to our broker, Whitney Kerr, on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, who we got next, Larissa?
Paul Helmer has his hand raised. We can try one more time. And in the attendees list, we have Meg Reuter, who has already submitted public testimony.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to speak in reference to private property rights, etc. We are definitely not in a communist state in the United States, but we do have control of our neighborhoods and our own property rights. And if someone, by what they do or don't do, affects us, then we do have a right to object to that. Hence the very purpose of city planning and development, and the importance of designation of particular areas of the city with certain zoning. We also have eminent domain, those kind of property rights. So by changing and allowing this to be designated as a historic property does not go in a communistic direction of taking the rights away from the property owner. It goes in the rights of preserving the neighborhood and the neighborhood's character and its own rights too, because a neighborhood is not just one property. It's a multitude of properties. I do live in the Southmoreland neighborhood and do support this designation. As far as preservationists go, there's a number of us that have a lot of credibility in regard to what Mr. Kerr was talking about, himself being very advanced in regard to preservation. We do appreciate him in that regard. But I have been called Mr. Preservation. I was architect of the Kansas City Landmarks Commission, and I won an award from HKC for being a community catalyst for revitalizing neighborhoods of Kansas City. So there's a lot of credentials that many of us have in regard to preservation and revitalization of the neighborhood. I would like to also reiterate that there's precedent been set where the Country Club Plaza has been adopted. And I think it was through the City Plan Commission as well as the City Council, the Country Club Plaza Bold Plan, which a lot of these kind of things are protective rights against ownership of properties. And so that is the kind of thing that is to be approved regardless of individual people's rights, to protect an entire district, an entire neighborhood. Westport Plaza has an overlay plan, which I think you have either heard already and adopted or is at the throes of your approval, to protect the property there from demolition and lots of high-rise construction. So there are areas of the city that we need to protect. I have a brief reflection on 4526, and this is in my own words, that regarding a threatened demolition of this property, let us think about our city's history and its great architecture. Buildings are a valuable resource that needs protection. It can be seen as an art form that should be treasured, like the art in galleries, fine restaurants, and wealthy patrons' homes. Good architecture is timeless. It does not come into style and fade out of style. Buildings on the national or local register come about due to the sense of place they invigorate us with. What makes this place unique? Who came before us? What did they contribute to our city? Kansas City is a wealth of people who represent pioneers, Europeans, Black and Hispanic, all as part of who we are. Regarding the above thoughts, we often have a contrary behavior regarding developers and sometimes even city, county government. Rather than fostering the need to save historic properties, they often antagonize with threats for the need of higher density. Instead, we need to take into consideration the value of each structure that is part of our cityscape. Without this thought, we can well be destroying part of who we are and our cultural heritage. Let us keep in mind the quote of the 19th century philosopher John Ruskin, who states, quote, "When we build and as we place stone upon stone and brick upon brick, let it be said by those who come after us, see what our ancestors have built for us." Sincerely, Paul Hilmer. I would like to be granted either now or in a little bit 2 more minutes to read a letter that Larry Dade, who owns a lot of property, residential apartments in Southmoreland neighborhood. And if it's all right for me to do that now, I would be glad to do that.
What's the wish of the commission on this?
I'd prefer not.
Okay. Anybody else?
I prefer not as well. How many more do we have to go?
That's it. We have no one else in the attendees list with their hands up. We have one phone number, I guess, that just raised their hand. Oh, it's Robert. Okay, they've lowered their hand. There's no more people in the attendees list with their hands raised.
Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like the wish of the commission is not to read the letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
though.
you.
All right, so anybody else, Larissa? Or
No
did
one
that-
else has their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. And so we're back to the applicant and probably city staff on this. Few things that were brought up. Do you kind of mind going over those, Mr. Wolf, or any thoughts there?
I said in general with the economic impact, I think the challenge we had as staff was just deciding, since there was no plan developed, that there wasn't really any ability to judge economic impact of the historic designation. Generally it's left up to city council, which it's always been this way, whether to designate a property or not. And we'll probably debate these things if it's forwarded onto the council with a recommendation for approval. So is there any other specific topics you'd like for me to address?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there are a couple of zoning related things that I can add to as well, because Brad's the historic preservation planner, and then I can comment on some of the planning and zoning things. Commissioner Enders is correct. The property is currently zoned R5, which would not permit a high-rise apartment at this time without a rezoning effort being made. And the designation for the local landmark would exist in perpetuity. So there were some commenting like about some sort of like 3-year hold. I'm not entirely sure what that was referring to, but just for clarification that if designated, it would be that way in perpetuity.
Just enough for the 3-year hold. Yeah, sorry. Yes, so if the Historic Preservation Commission denies an application for example, demolition, it is only denied for 3 years, and then the applicant can proceed. So it is not a permanent denial.
Say it again, just so I understand. So it's if
the commission, for example, if this property ends up being designated and the owners come in and apply for the demolition, which would be the next step, if the Historic Preservation Commission denies it, it is not a permanent denial. It's only a denial for 3 years.
okay, so even with the historic designation, it would be a 3-year pause.
Yeah, it's not a permanent denial. No.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Burkhalter, since you're the applicant, comments here based on the public testimony?
Yes, I would like to say that there's been a lot of talk about how much historic preservation experience the applicant or the owner and his broker have had in the past, but it seems like it's only a priority when it's convenient. It's a priority for our neighborhood that we certainly try to maintain this home and provide other opportunities for it to exist. As we've all discussed, there have been several examples of adaptive reuse for homes like this in our neighborhood, and it is a contributing part of what makes our neighborhood so pleasant to be in. And so we have been asking many times to be given this opportunity to just cast a wider net and see if it can be readapted. So that is what we hope for. We certainly do not want a negative outcome for anyone, but we do believe there is an opportunity for everyone to win.
Yeah, thank you. All right, any other thoughts or questions from the commission?
I have a question going back to ownership on the lot that you pictured, showing that it is now containing items from houselessness and blight. Who did you say the owner was of that lot?
So that property, this is where Consolidated Development Partners.
I just need a name. I just need a name.
All right. So this was owned by Doug Price, but the initial owner was George Burt and Consolidated Development Partners, who had a development that fizzled, got sold and sold again, and now it's in the hands of Doug Price.
Thank you.
So to be clear on that, the homeless encampment did not occur while George Burt owned the property.
Okay, we've got our all public testimonies done. We're just amongst the commission now. Any thoughts or comments on this site, on this project?
Yeah, as you all know, with similar historic preservation applications that were brought forward not by the owner, I'm usually not supportive of that type of thing. I think this is a unique situation in that with the zoning that currently exists on the parcel, I don't think there's an opportunity to, create greater density the way that the applicant or the way that the potential buyer might want. And so for that and many other reasons related to the historic nature of this house, I'm going to be supportive of the staff's recommendation.
Okay. Other comments, Commissioner Beasley?
I was thinking back on another case that came before us. Has council representation been contacted on this issue at all?
I don't know if that's a question for Mr. Wolf.
Not by city staff. I don't know if the applicants have.
Okay.
So I take that to be a no.
Yeah,
Yes.
But they'll see it next.
Well, I'm not worried about them seeing it next. When we had one before us before, council was here to voice why they were in support of some type of delay for more study and for that particular owner to come back and share his plans with that community. So that's why I asked, has council been connected with this issue at all? And I know this is unique. They are sworn, the new council is what, 5 minutes to 11? They're sworn in now. So I know that you had outgoing and incoming, but the still fact is that the one project I'm thinking of, council came before us to ask us to listen and have a cooling period because that particular project was directly on the streetcar line.
And Commissioner
And I've
Beasley,
heard different things come up about the closeness and proximity of this piece of property in conjunction to that item as well.
Yeah.
What is it, Anna?
Just
And
to
I'm
note,
sure-
the previous application, actually the city council people were the applicants, so they were representing their own application.
Even more so. Is that what you were going to say as well, Anna?
that is correct.
Okay. Mr. Baker, anything?
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be a no on this. I can kind of see both sides to this argument, but I think hate to be the property rights guy, but I think the property rights, this feels like a delay rather than a change. And so, and then I also see the kind of different infill in and around that neighborhood as well. That's new. So tough one. So I'll be a no on this one.
I've got another question type comment. Were the applicants or are the applicants before the presentation we just received aware of the projects that Mr. Brett has done in our communities?
We have been provided with the same packet, with a packet of information on the developer's qualifications.
So the one thing that I am seeing in those projects listed, there are more commercial reuses. This is the first residential type property that would need to be restructured. And I'm thinking, I'm not hearing where there's been any type of communication on desires from both sides of the parties to help support the nature of the current structure of the community, as well as the future that this building could bring. So at that point, I'm a no.
Yeah, I would ask all commissioners to consider that, when I was, again, on the previous case, which is not that important to this case, that was purchased at auction and in a dilapidated state. And this is something that the homeowner has owned and lived in not less than 3 years ago and is now saying it's uninhabitable. And there's no one else to blame but the homeowner, in my mind. And this is one that's going to require rezoning to add density. And I just don't think that it makes sense to jeopardize a historic home like this without having a path forward for rezoning and for a development plan. And so this seems much higher risk to me than what we were trying to do, which was, what the applicant was trying to do in demolishing a vacant building that had been bought at auction that had been on the market and vacant for years.
Yeah, that's a good point that you just brought up, Commissioner Enders. As you started with your testimony, I'm with you. It's hard to when the applicant is coming on behalf of the landowner or the property owner, and the property owner is just not aware of this going on, or they find out at a later date it's not something that they want as their designation. It seems like there should be a partnership in that. when this thing kind of comes forward. The thing I'm really struggling with is I understand this is already underneath a historical overlay. Is that correct, Anna or Brad?
No, there's no overlay on this property.
There's no overlay whatsoever. Okay, so that kind of changes things a little bit there, but so with that, I agree, Commissioner Enders. Yeah, it's been sitting there for a couple of years and deteriorated over time, but I imagine it was kind of a challenge to keep it going even while they lived there. These kind of things do become a little bit expensive. I hate to see a house like this get demolished, but at the same time, I understand what the owner's trying to do. So my opinion is a no on this at this point in time.
Yeah, in terms of property rights, I'll add that, if I have a single family home in Brookside, I might have the right to do a lot of different things with it, but because it's zoned in a single family zoned area, I don't have the ability to necessarily sell it to or to build myself or sell it to someone to build apartments. And so again, I would remind all commissioners that there's no guarantee that either this body or council or BZA would want to see the change of use of this site.
Yeah, and that's not for us to decide. That's for the actual homeowner and the property owner to decide. If that's something they want to do, they take the chance and the market and see if it'll actually occur on their behalf to get the rezoning that they want. You're right. There's a great chance it may not happen. So then they have to kind of go back to the drawing board as to what they're going to do. And I would think that they might do that before the actual demolition of the property itself.
And at the same time, open communication and working for the same purpose. Who knows? Demolition may not take place. It could or it couldn't. It's still up to the new owner as to how they're going to proceed. But looking at the case as presented, I'm still a no.
Okay. Well, I think we're at the point we need to make a motion and move forward here.
Mr. Chair, go ahead,
sorry.
Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
I was trying to get the number. I moved to recommend, would this be
Denial
or not recommend not designating the historic designation on case number 3.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second for denying the historic preservation on and as stated in docket item number 3. Giovanni, can you take a roll call on that motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
No.
Rojas,
No.
Sadowski.
I wasn't on this one.
Okay, so at this point in time, we've got 5 commissioners on this case, and it's a 3-2 vote for recommendation going forward as a denial for the historic designation. So thank you, everybody, for bringing it through, talking it through. Appreciate everybody's comments. I'm sure it goes to the next step here with the council. All right. With that, let's see what time is it, 11 o'clock. Is everybody okay? Do we need a quick break before we move forward? Are we all right?
We're okay.
All right, let's move on in to docket item number 5, please.
Docket item number 5 is CDSUP 2023-00014, a request to approve a special use permit in District M1-5 for a warehouse and accessory structures and variances to the Boulevard and Parkway standards on about 3.75 acres generally located at Belmont Boulevard and St. John Avenue. And Andrew Clark is the staff planner.
Thank you, Larissa. Good morning,
Chairman Crowell and fellow commissioners, I will share my screen. Before you is docket number 5, CDSUP 2023-14. This is for the approval of a special use permit at 123 Belmont Boulevard. The site is located in the historic Northeast. It is in the part of the Northeast that is in the 4th Council District. You can see the site here outlined in yellow has always been light industrial in nature. And then it's primarily all residential detached homes on the west side of Belmont Boulevard. And the reason why you're seeing this case today is this light manufacturing use is located on the boulevard. And whenever that use is expanded, it does trigger a special use permit. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 small storage buildings at their existing site. As you can see here, I tried to draw what they will somewhat appear like once they are constructed. The applicant is complying with the Boulevard and Parkway standards of having the buildings at least 75 feet back from the property line, and they will be putting up a fence that complies with the Boulevard and Parkway standards. I just wanted to show you these photos. This building has been here for a very long time. And as I stated, it's always been light industrial. I believe the yellow pages had it for quite a long time. And then on the west side, you can see some of the homes that are there on Belmont Boulevard. The applicant is scheduled to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment next week at their hearing. Staff is requesting that the applicant revise their plans so that the driveway complies with our pedestrian standards. Simply what we're asking for is that they show striping and make improvements to the drive that has weathered away over the years. Staff's recommendation is approval with conditions for this case. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission to city staff?
So
go ahead.
So is the variance that there are structures on the Boulevard and Parkway standard or Boulevard and the driveway? Is that, I guess in the staff report it said there was looking for variances to the Boulevard and Parkway standard, but you said they generally complied?
They're seeking one variance that buildings have to have 60% transparency. These buildings will not have transparency, but because of the landscaping and fence they're providing, that was the compromise that staff can support that request for the variance. And the reason why you're seeing the SUP is expanding, of course, an industrial use on a boulevard.
Yeah. Okay. And these are permanent structures, correct?
Correct. This all occurred when a building permit came to our division for review.
Okay. Sounds good.
In a similar line of questioning, what's the rough square footage of this? And if it was under a certain threshold, would it not have come to us? Or because it's light manufacturing on a boulevard, we would have seen it regardless of square footage?
Exactly, regardless of square footage. This site never had a special use permit because it existed prior to the Boulevard and Parkway standards. But when you expand a non-conforming use, then it triggers to get this official SUP.
Okay. And do you have handy the approximate square footage?
I believe each structure was 30 by 40.
Okay.
And they're building 2 of them. So they're fairly small compared to the whole site. That's why staff generally supports this small business.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission to city staff? All right, let's move on to the applicant, if the applicant is available.
I'm promoting Al Herman.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Al Hermans. I'm with SDC Engineering. On behalf of the owner, I don't know if he is on this call or not. He had a meeting scheduled for about this time, so I don't think he is actually available. But yeah, I just wanted to answer any questions that the commission might have. I think the staff report pretty well outlines what we're attempting to do here.
Okay. Any questions from the commission to the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's open it up for public testimony. So if there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 5, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one appears with their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Anything to add, Mr. Herman, on this case?
No, not really. We're aware of the conditions that staff is recommending, and we'll modify the plans accordingly as we finish the process out.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close testimony then and speak amongst the commission, or I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item number 5 with conditions.
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion in a couple seconds regarding approval of docket item number 5. Giovanni, can you take a roll call on that motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Sadowski,
Aye.
None. Looks like the motion passes 6-0 for approval of docket item number 5. Thank you
All
for bringing it in and good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Ready for docket item number 6, please.
Docket item number 6 is CD SUP 2023-00035, a request to approve a special use permit in District R-2.5 and District B1-1 to allow for a parking lot and school amenities on about 8 acres generally located at Wallace Avenue and Wilson Avenue. And Andrew Clark is a staff planner.
Thank you, Larissa. Okay, so now is docket number 6. This is a special use permit, 2023-35, located at 414 Wallace Avenue. This is for a parking area at the Kansas City International Academy campus. It is located about a mile east of the project you just heard, and this is also in the 4th Council District, right where Independence and Kansas City meet up, directly east of 435. The red arrow is where the proposed parking area will be, and then hatched in black is the overall KCIA campus, which used to be the Benjamin Harrison School. That was once a KCPS school. This project triggered a special use permit because of the amount of impervious surface being added to the overall campus. And just like the previous case, this school has always presumably had a special use permit, but now we're doing a special use permit for the entire campus because of the construction of this parking area. The red arrow and the photo here, this is very close to the power plant, and there are transmission lines that run along the western perimeter of the site. So the applicant is seeking several variances related to landscaping, a vehicular use area, and the amount of impervious surface in a residential front yard. One of these lots is still zoned residential. They had to move all of the landscaping to the west and east of the site to stay out of Evergy's easement. And highlighted in yellow on the south side of the site will be a new sidewalk and crosswalk to create greater pedestrian safety in the area. Here are some shots of the existing conditions. The school has been functioning for many years, and they continue to have more and more enrollment, which means more traffic. These photos on Wilson Avenue show some of the obstacles that the neighbors and the school have to face, especially when dropping off and picking up the students. So this parking lot will alleviate a lot of the on-street pedestrian hazards that are currently there. Also, by moving the parking lot, the new parking lot will allow more accessible parking to be adjacent to the school. So it also helps for accessibility purposes. Staff does recommend approval with conditions for this case. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for city staff by the commissioners on this project? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and welcome the applicant then.
I have promoted Brian Hochstein.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep. Good morning.
I'm Brian Hochstein with MKEC Engineering. Only a couple things to add to Andy's presentation. This was a difficult one. There's quite a bit of grade change occurring on this site, so we are incorporating retaining wall. We worked through some things to do subsurface detention. We feel comfortable with all of those kind of aspects that also occur with putting impervious area on the site. And we would be remiss in this school. We use almost everything twice for some multiple use. So we envision this for staff to help relieve the main parking lot, but we've also put a little, we're going to stripe it with a little walking area so that they can kind of cone it off, and the kids have a place for in PE to do some walking. And then we have an educational area in the northeast corner of the parking lot. We're gonna do natives. We kind of had a leftover area where we've got some water there, so we're gonna do a native butterfly mix garden that they can work on as kind of a science area as well. So just a couple extra things to add that we're happy with. And then on the landscaping, yes, we're seeking an administrative adjustment on that, but we feel like we have heavily landscaped it. We did talk to the neighbors in the neighborhood association. We only heard back from 2 neighbors. They were primarily concerned because of all of the congestion on when street closures might be happening because of the construction, and also just kind of the timeline and schedule of it. So we didn't have any opposition from the neighbors. So.
Yeah. Any questions from the commission to the applicant? See, you do have a crosswalk to get across the street there, Wilson Avenue, onto the school?
We do, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's pretty lacking right now, honestly, Chair. They don't really have any real good signalized access. Not that there's a lot of sidewalk over there, but as this area hopefully continues to improve, I think there's some opportunities there as well. So that will definitely help with traffic flow right there, just to get people to slow down as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of this area too, is kind of that site that Casey Port is looking for the logistics center. So there's going to be increased traffic in that area down the road. So just trying to make sure that we keep the kids safe and as they get across Wilson.
Yeah, and really to try and get more parents onto the site to do drop off and pick up and so that's why we envision it as a staff lot. So and then finally, yeah, we agree with all the conditions that we've worked with on staff. So
okay, so at this time, let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 6, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one appears with a raised hand.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Any other thoughts on this? Or I guess I didn't ask if the commission had any questions for you either. So, all right. With that, we'll close testimony and I'll take a motion, please, unless you want to talk about it.
I move to approve docket item 6 with conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of docket item number 6. Giovanni, can you take a roll call on that motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Sadowski.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Thank you for bringing it in and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, let's move on to docket item number 7, please.
Docket item number 7 is case number CD CPC 2023-00097, a request to approve a development plan in District M1-5 on about 40 acres generally located at the northeast corner of 150 Highway and Prospect Avenue. And Genevieve Kahn is the staff planner.
Good morning, commission members. One moment while I share my screen. All right, before you, docket item number 7 is for a non-residential development plan for the Masters Transportation headquarters development at 14677 Prospect Avenue. Site is generally located in the southwesternmost portion of the city. Here is the subject site outlined in yellow. It's at the northeast corner of 150 and Prospect, and it contains 2 parcels that have since been combined by the applicant. This is the proposed development plan. The north of this plan is actually on the left side, so think about rotating this about 90 degrees to the right. But the primary building here outlined in orange is the larger of the 2 buildings. It's just under 290,000 square feet, and that headquarter building is expected to contain, I believe, some office space and mostly assembly area, as this is a light manufacturing use. And Masters Transportation will assemble their product at this site. And then there is a smaller building up in the northeast corner of the subject site, and that will be a service building to service vehicles that they produce. And then you can see there's a lot of parking area, as they'll need holding space for the vehicles before they move on to their next location. And then there are some elevations provided by the applicant with a mix of building materials. There is enhanced articulation on the areas of the office that are most visible from 150 Highway and Prospect. You can see this is the corner on Prospect, and this is the corner of the building on 150. And then these are the elevations for that service building that will be tucked back pretty far on the site. So we're not expecting that it will be incredibly visible from the public right of way. And then I just have a few street views of the site. This is the view of the site from 150 Highway. And then this is the intersection of Prospect and 150. And then just lastly, this is Prospect. The site extends farther up, and there is an existing access drive to the property to the east. And there is a cross-access agreement between property owners, and that access will remain across this development to access that site. Staff recommends approval subject to conditions for this project. And I did just want to point out one condition, number 7, that requires a correction to their traffic impact study be made prior to full council approval for this project. So there is still some more communication between Public Works and the applicant before we can get this one fully approved. And at this time, I can take any questions.
Okay, I guess I just have one question. Are there going to be any improvements to Prospect Avenue as part of this project or no?
If any staff is available from Public Works or LDD, feel free to jump in. I believe Prospect is on the city's major street plan, which rather than requiring half street improvements, they're just required to pay an impact fee since it's a city designated improvement.
Any other questions from the commission to city staff?
Can you just clarify what has to happen to condition number 7 before getting in front of council?
Sure. So the traffic impact study for this project was a little bit delayed. So it didn't go through the first review at the same time that all staff was reviewing the project. So I believe there's just a couple of tweaks that need to be made. It was just that it was submitted later on in the process. And that was reviewed by Monica Kearney in Public Works. So she may be better able to provide specifics.
That's okay. So we just need to amend it to say that the traffic impact study needs to be completed prior to council or needs to be amended.
Yeah, yes, condition number 7 is a condition, but it says you need to make these corrections prior to moving forward. So that is all included in the staff report package. I just wanted to point out to you all that we're still going to be working on a few things before this can be heard for final approval.
Got it. Okay. So nothing needs to be changed. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for city staff? All right, then let's go ahead and welcome the applicant to our meeting here.
And Dustin Burton was promoted, and I am promoting Mark Abbott as well.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Dustin Burton with RIC. We're at 400 East 17th Street here in Kansas City, Missouri, representing the Masters Transportation Group. I'll keep it pretty brief. I don't have a formal presentation. Genevieve, as always, did a wonderful job introducing the project. You know, it's a relocation of their HQ, the headquarters. If you kind of pan down a little bit on kind of south of Grandview, you'll see their current headquarters, which is very busy. They are certainly out of space. And so they are very interested in this expansion and moving that full production facility over to KCMO. And if you're not familiar with Masters, they're essentially, they build shuttles and buses. So the idea on this facility is to bring in kind of what they call the raw chassis. So it doesn't really have anything other than a motor and maybe a cab on it, and they'll improve it with either bus treatment or shuttle treatment. Part of this as well, I do have a maintenance facility that Genevieve did point out. It's kind of the northeast corner. So there'll be a maintenance aspect to it, but primarily it is the production facility. I believe last count, it's roughly 300 full-time employees for the facility at full build out. I think we've got a few items that Mark Abbott has joined that he might want to discuss as far as the conditions. So I'll just go ahead and let him jump on in.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and Commission members. Mark Abbott with Polsinelli. There are 3 conditions that we would like to change. The first one is condition 8. Developer shall secure permits to extend public sanitary. If you then also look at condition 28 that states the public sanitary sewer system need not be extended. Those two conflict with each other. We are not extending public sanitary. So we would request that on number 8, extending stormwater, that's fine. But the reference in condition 8 to public sanitary be deleted. The second one is condition 10. Our boundary survey shows that there is already 40 feet of right-of-way to the center line of Paseo. So if that condition needs to stay in there, if it could be developer shall dedicate some language of if necessary, or if necessary to have 40 feet, some type of language to that effect. But our current survey shows that there already is 40 feet. And then the third one being condition 15. So that is there used to be this property used to consist of 2 lots. There's a KC mode code section that allows for combining 2 lots with just recording a deed as opposed to going through a replatting process, just so that it's in the record. We proceeded under 88-535-2-B. That deed was recorded. So county GIS shows it as 1 lot. I think there may have been a snafu and that city planning and zoning didn't receive a copy of the deed before it was platted. So Casey Mo's GIS currently shows it as 2 lots. So it has been combined. So the request would be if on condition 15, it could be, developer shall cause it to be platted or processed, or to provide the deed that was recorded with the county that combined the lots into a single lot. The code section technically requires that we provide the proposed deed to city before it's recorded. And it appears that that was, I can't find confirmation that that occurred. Thank you.
Okay. See here. Anything else, applicant, before we kind of go back and check with staff on these 3 items?
I don't think so.
Okay. So if we can go back, staff, and kind of get your thoughts on these 3 items that were, so Genevieve, we'll start with number 8, condition 8.
Yes, and some of these were discussed in our applicant's DRC meeting, but some of them were not removed according to our discussion. So yes, I do agree that number 8 should probably just be revised to delete out the sanitary sewer language. We can keep the storm water language in there, and that should resolve that issue.
Number 10 on the dedication of 40 feet right away from the center line.
Yes, if I also remember discussing the right of way, and Mark, you did confirm based on the survey that there is the correct amount of right of way there.
Yes, and we could certainly provide that to you as part of the if required language, if that clause is acceptable.
Okay. Because I mean, if it's provided, which, should have been reviewed, then I believe we don't need that condition at all.
Yeah.
So that can be removed, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Maybe just stated if you leave it that just the applicant needs to provide that documentation.
Yes.
All right, and then number 15.
And then, yes, I do agree that number 15, because they went through the lot combination process, we can either revise that condition to just say provide the recorded whatever was provided to the county, or delete it. We should probably receive those documents. So we'll revise number 15 to provide that recorded deed.
Provide the recorded. Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, let's see. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant then? On anything?
Thanks for providing jobs and not just 30 people moving boxes around. Appreciate that. So.
Okay, so at this time, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 7, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one appears with their hands raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else applicants to talk through here?
I don't believe so.
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll close testimony and speak amongst the commission, or if there's nothing to discuss, I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Crow, I move to approve docket item number 7 with conditions and the following 3 changes. On condition number 8, removing the language regarding the sanitary sewer. On condition number 10, adding that the documentation be provided by the developer that the 40 feet of right-of-way is available already, and that the developer will dedicate additional right-of-way if needed. And then on condition number 15, that the developer provide the recorded deed from the county that shows the lot consolidation.
Okay, what about number 7? Oh, no.
I think we're good.
Okay, very good.
Second.
So I've got a motion in a second for approval of docket item number 7 with changes to conditions as stated. Giovanni, can you take a roll call on that motion, please?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crown,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Sadowski,
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes in 6-0. Thank you for bringing it in, and thank you for bringing your business into Kansas City, Missouri. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. All right, with that, let's move on to, I guess, our last item of the day, docket item number 8, please.
Okay, docket item number 8 is CD SUP 2023-000036, a request to approve a special use permit to construct a restroom in District R80 for sports and recreation participant uses on about 83 acres generally located at West Kenneth Road and East Loch Lloyd Parkway. And I am the staff planner for this application. And I will share my screen. Okay. As I mentioned, this is a special use permit located at 51 East Loch Lloyd Parkway. The subject site is located along the southwesternmost boundary of Kansas City, Missouri, as shown on the map. Here is an overview of the subject property. The Loch Lloyd Golf Course is proposing an expansion into the Kansas City, Missouri limits. And the expansion consists of a restroom and an extension of a golf cart lane. A golf course is considered a sports and recreation participant use in the zoning and development code, and that use requires a special use permit. So you're also looking for an accessory to that use, which is the restroom in question. The parcels to the north, east, and west are zoned R80, and then to the south is the city of Belton. Here's an overview of the site. You can see it's fairly close to the southern border. And then just a zoomed in view showing the location of the restroom, where the square is and the pull off for the golf carts. The addition to the golf course is 266 feet in size and about 15 feet in height. And the restroom is in compliance with the accessory structure standards located in the zoning and development code. Access to the structure is provided by the golf course lane, and all parking and additional vehicular access is located at the entrance of the golf course. There is sufficient pedestrian access as well. And the accessory structure consists of heavy timber and cedar louver, cast stone, and hardy board. Since this is an accessory structure, landscaping is not required. However, the applicant is providing landscaping to shield it from East Loch Lloyd. And with that, staff is recommending approval with conditions. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Maybe stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, I will try.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no questions from the commissioners, let's welcome the applicant then.
I am promoting Lee Turner.
All right. Good morning, Lee. Looks like all we need is your camera on and ready for testimony here. Oh, now you muted yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
You have a camera by chance?
I do. I apologize. Give me just a second, Chair.
Okay.
There you go. How does that?
Looking good. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for your time. I am Lee Turner. I'm the owner's representative for Lock Lloyd. Across to my left here is Brett Hogland, who is the engineer of record for this project. We appreciate your time this morning.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add from the staff presentation?
We don't have any issues with the stipulations or conditions that Larissa pointed out and provided. So we're here to answer any questions.
Okay. Very good. Any questions from the commission to the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public testimony then. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 8, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
Mr. Chair, no one appears with their hand raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony. And so if there's nothing else to add, applicants?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll take a motion in by the commission, please.
Chair, I move to approve docket item 8 with conditions.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 8 with conditions stated. Giovanni, can you please take roll call on that motion?
Baker,
Aye.
Beasley,
Aye.
Crow,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Sadowski.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes 6-0. We appreciate you bringing it in and good luck with the project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yep. All right. I think that concludes all of our items on the docket or the agenda. Anything else anybody would like to add?
I had a quick question. I know one of our kind of committee or commission's powers is to make recommendations to council, and I was wondering what the process was for that. I think my one thing, there's that massive self-storage unit going up on the trolley trail, and it feels like it's an oversight of the zoning to have manufacturing that allows that by right. And so I guess I'm personally interested in making a recommendation to council to explore manufacturing zoning adjacent to residential and what that means for uses like that. I think we even saw one today with the accessory dwelling units. That's the same zoning right next to single family that could in fact be like a 4-story self-storage unit building. So I didn't know if there was a process or if people were interested in making that type of recommendation in the coming meetings, but that's something I'm interested in.
Sarah, is that something maybe you can help us out with, or thoughts on that? Or maybe you want to think about it and write a note to everybody, or?
Sure. Commissioner Baker is right. And so the code does provide that
the commission can make recommendations to the council on legislative matters, and it sounds like that's what he's suggesting, or at least that the council study that. There isn't, a detailed process described in the code for that. I think, you could have it maybe as a discussion item, and perhaps you'd want to convey some sort of writing to the council. If you all could reach a consensus on that, I think that would be one way to go. But you can sort of design it as you deem it appropriate, because there's not a specific process set out in the code for that. But I think that would probably make the most sense, right? To have some sort of writing. I don't know that it has to be a specific ordinance necessarily, but some policy recommendations, right? You could do something like that.
Could I potentially work with staff to come up with a draft kind of statement and kind of maybe some points of consideration, and then we could explore it in commission, and then if we need to change some text, we can, and then vote on it? Would that be a good process, Chair and Sarah?
Yes, I mean, that's fine, as long as the chair agrees with that, that would be fine. We would need to make sure that we include it on the agenda.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Yep.
So, yeah.
That's why I'm bringing it up now. So
yeah,
I don't.
Right.
Yeah, it feels as though the language wouldn't be necessarily too cumbersome to come up with, and it might just be about figuring out where all it needs to be added and where all it's mentioned, or where, what parts of the code reference where manufacturing can and can't go. But I'd be very supportive of that.
I looked, someone did a map for me, but there's just these weird kind of manufacturing zoning, especially in the crossroads as well, and in the West Bottoms, where there's a ton of residential development happening, and it feels like it's somewhat out of place, or there needs to be an additional check on that type of development before it can be just done by right. So and I would imagine that this would be a recommendation to council to do a resolution, to come back to staff, then come back in ordinance form. But I think there's so much going on. I'd like to at least point it out for folks to consider.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on when you would want to place that on the agenda? We don't have to answer that now, if not, but just, it would be important to let Joe and Lisa know ahead of time so that they can get that.
I'll email Joe, and then we can figure out a way to start on it, and then I could let you all know, and then we can put it on the agenda a meeting or two after that, so we'd have it ready.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? I want to point out, to make sure that our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, we have that one docketed item that was here today, Twin Creeks Plaza. Just want to make sure that we're going to have a quorum for that. So Enders and Rojas, that you will be here at the next meeting, and hopefully Allender and Hill will be able to make it as well. I'm sure Allender will. And I think Hill will as well, but just want to confirm that so we can hear that case. I have an issue. Sometimes it kind of limits us when we only have 4 that hear a case. My preference is, at a very minimum, we have 5, just for this exact reason that something comes up, that a case has to be delayed another 2 weeks due to quorum. So maybe that's my plea for everybody, to make the meetings as much as possible. They're same day every month, the first and the third Tuesday. So just hopefully we can make them and work around them, so we have as much participation as possible. All right, if there's nothing else, move to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
Take care.